Good morning. This is Maria Quattrone with Be the Solution, and today I welcome my guest, Kathryn Ott Lovell. Kathryn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Great.
I wanted to be in a business that I did not have a ceiling. Take a pen and a piece of paper, draw a line, draw another line next to it. At 365 days, if you drew 365 lines, you started here with one line, but look how far you've come.
Kathryn, we're so happy to have you today. Welcome. You're the Parks and Recs Commissioner here in Philadelphia, and I know how crazy busy you are with everything, especially this is like the busiest time for you. So thank you for taking the time out this morning to be on Be the Solution.
Sure, my pleasure. This is our Super Bowl season at Parks and Rec. Summer is it. All our eggs are in the summer basket.
Yes, and thank God for Parks and Recs, because without it, a lot of kids would be lost, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do a tremendous amount of programming in the summer. We do programming year round, but this, when the kids are out of school, parents really look to us to keep their kids engaged and active in neighborhoods all over the city. So we're running summer camps. We have pools open. We have spray grounds, of course, all of our playgrounds. And then we actually have a really cool initiative called Play Streets that's happening too. So we're meeting kids with fun right where they live.
What's that about, Play Streets?
Yeah, so Play Streets was started here about probably 50 years ago. There was a federal program that started to offer lunches to kids. When kids get lunches in school, but when school is out, a lot of kids go hungry. And so the federal government started a program where they would fund getting lunches out to kids right where they were, at their homes. And so there was a Play Streets initiative started, I think probably back in the 1950s. That's as far back as we know it goes. And so it's been a meal program that Parks and Recreation has administered for that long. And it's basically, we're the second largest meal distributor in the city for children. So it's the school district and then Parks and Rec. We distribute over 1 million meals every single year. But last summer during the pandemic, when we were really trying to figure out, what was summer going to look like for young people in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, it was pretty bleak, if you remember. Schools had been closed and, churches were closed and, it was just, nobody knew what was happening. And so we knew that we did host summer camps, but they were really limited because we really wanted to keep them for families of essential workers. And so we thought, and we couldn't open pools. So, we thought, we see ourselves as the Department of Joy and Fun in the city. That's what we do. And so we thought, we can't let this summer just go by and for kids to have, no fun and no good memories. And so we decided to use the platform, the framework of Play Streets, which basically is a meal delivery program at over 300 streets throughout the city. So any volunteer can raise their hand and say, I'm willing to host a Play Street on my block. And basically they agree to accept these meals in the morning in a cooler. 2 meals, right? So it's a lunch and then a snack. And then they distribute the meals at a certain time during the day. They have to do it all at the same time. But they also agree to close that street between 11 and 4 every day. So we have over 300 streets in the city that are closed to traffic between 11 and 4 because a volunteer goes out there and puts a piece of string on the block and the kids can play right outside their house really safely. So parents don't have to have that fear of like sending their kid to the playground or sending their kid riding around. It's different from when we grew up. Parents don't have that same sense of safety in just letting their kids run loose till it's dark. And so last year, what we decided is because, when we were really trying to think about how we thought, let's use the model of Play Streets, but instead of just delivering meals, let's deliver fun. And so we raised a lot of money, all private money, about $600,000. We partnered with the YMCA, tremendous partner. And we basically called it Enhanced Play Streets. And so we created these kits that we delivered to every single street every day. There were sports kits, so flag football sets and playground balls, basketballs, soccer balls, footballs. We delivered art kits, so figure like construction paper and scissors and glue and glitter, markers, crayons. We did literacy kits, which were just books, tons and tons of books at all different reading and age levels. And then lastly, we did cooling kits, and the cooling kits included super soakers for everybody, personalized misting fans for the parents, pop-up tents and umbrellas, like patio umbrellas, and then water balloons. And so we delivered these kits out to all the streets. And so, everybody got fun delivered right with their meals, and then on 50 streets in some of the most vulnerable communities. So we looked at crime data, equity data, and heat vulnerability. At 50 of the play streets, we called them super streets. And not only did we deliver all of those kits, but we actually delivered play programming. So we actually had play ambassadors that we hired who went to the streets and delivered programming, like just actually got the kids engaged in play. And then we had partners come out. So we had this amazing guy that runs a barbershop in North Philly. He came out and did haircuts and barbershop academy demonstrations. We had the Eagles come out. We had the Phillies, the Flyers. They came out and did demonstrations, the Philadelphia Union. And so we actually had active programming that happened every day between 11 and 4, in addition to the meals and in addition to that fun. So this summer, sort of we're coming out of the pandemic, but some parents are still really leery about sending their kids off to camp. So we did it again with the Y as our partner, and we raised more money so that we could make play streets happen. We call them super streets. We could make that happen again this summer. So we just kicked it off last week, and it lasts about 6 weeks, but it's tremendous for the kids, but it's pretty awesome for the parents too, who can just say to their kids, like, get off your game system, get off the iPad, go right out front where I can see you, where I know you're safe, and have a good time.
Wow, that's remarkable. Before we got on, I was telling you how I grew up by going to the park in Max Myers Park, where we were from, up in Northeast Philadelphia. And I'll tell you, it's a saving grace for kids, because without the Parks and Rec Center, I don't know what a lot of these kids would be doing, the ones that aren't, able to afford to go away to camp. And we would be, the parents are working. If you're not doing something and playing and being entertained or learning, that tends to get little middle-aged kids in trouble.
It does. That it's a really vulnerable population between those ages of like 11 and 14. You're right. If they don't have something really positive to do, and more importantly, if they don't have positive adult mentors around them, sort of like redirecting them and steering them in the right direction, then they can make other choices. They can make bad choices, and that can really change the trajectory of their life for the worse. So we really, try to provide as many opportunities as possible. The good news is too, at Parks and Rec, and again, I think a lot of people don't realize the depth and breadth of our work at Parks and Rec. People don't know that we, are one of the largest Parks and Rec systems in the country, that we have, thousands of employees, that we, people think of us and they think, oh, they just, they manage the parks, but we really are a social service agency. Not only do we provide, we provide after school programs, we provide the summer camp programs, the play streets, the meals programs, but we also employ teenagers. We're the largest employer of teenagers in the city of Philadelphia. So every summer, we have about 1,300 kids who come to work for us, and they serve as counselors in our summer camp. And then we have hundreds of our lifeguards that are 16, 17, and 18 years old. So, we're also, for many kids, the very first job they have, that very first exposure into into the career world. And many of them stick with us. We have so many of our recreation leaders who started out with us because they hung out at a rec center and got a job as a youth worker, in the summer camp. And then they stay with us, and they have a great career with us after that experience. So, it really is a great opportunity for kids to earn money, right? And not have to do other things to get money, that they earn money the right way. And We provide a lot of financial literacy for those kids as well. And another great thing that our teens do, we call them our youth workers, is, they do a project every summer as part of their work experience. And it's called the Charity Challenge. And so we encourage these youth workers so basically there's, 15 to 20 youth workers at every single summer camp, and we have 130 summer camps. And so we encourage the kids at the youth workers at the camp to think of a charity that they want to support, and then they have to come up with creative ways to raise funds for that charity. So they have to investigate the charity, learn about it, educate themselves about it. They have to vote then on what charity they want to support, and then they have to come up with ideas of fundraisers. And they've been so creative with these ideas. One of them was they did a smoothie bar. Well, we don't have blenders, so every kid brought a blender from home. And they just set up a smoothie bar. And then, outside, instead of a lemonade stand, it was a smoothie stand.
That's right.
And they
Perfect.
smoothies. And then another time they did, charge the kids to throw a pie in the face of the rec leader. So they just really fun things, and they've ended up raising, I think it's over $20,000 for these charities. And then at the end of the year, we bring the charities in, and the kids actually get to present a check to them. So it's a work experience. It's teaching them about philanthropy. It's teaching them about event planning. There's so many different experiences that they get.
That's so empowering for them. I mean, it starts young. When we do interviews and we're asking, we'll go back and ask people when they started to work and what kind of work they did. And you'll see most of the people that we interview that have worked in high school have a different mindset about working, and they get that instilled in them early on that you have to put the effort in. And I think that's really, really important that we educate the young people about putting the effort in and what it looks like and helping others. And that's all about helping others. I mean, they're there to support younger people, younger children in the camp, and they're teaching them. And it's that whole process of that evolution. I think some of that for some time got a little lost. I'm so happy to hear this, that the center, the Parks and Recs they're doing all this. When I was reading, investigating before, I asked you to be on the show, I saw 2,700 people are employed. I had no idea. I mean, I think a lot of times, like you said, that, we take for granted, they're just doing the parks, or making it pretty and clean, and, they're in charge of that, but you don't really think of what really that means down the line and how that affects our society. And
it's very true. Yeah, Parks and Rec is 11% of our city's land mass. I mean, we're over 10% of the city is park and rec land. And so we're incredibly blessed to have so many public spaces, under the city's care in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, it's just it's pretty tremendous in terms of the sheer volume of the spaces that we have. And I think when people think of Parks and Rec, they think of Fairmount Park, which of course is like our signature park, right? In East and West Fairmount Park. But it's also the 159 recreation centers. It's 143 neighborhood parks. It's 6 watershed parks. It's 160 miles of trails. That all we have 6 older adult centers. We have 5 ice rinks. We have 4 golf courses. That's all comprising this extraordinary Parks and Rec system that we have. I mean, it's really we're so lucky as Philadelphians to have a system of this size and this scale. And you're right, it does take a lot of people to make that run every single day. We're also in charge of all the street trees in the city, which is sort of the bane of my existence, because a tree goes down and we're the ones that got to go and get it. And that's unlike other Parks and Rec systems in the country too. So, we're really blessed as Philadelphians, but I won't sugarcoat it. We're really challenged too, because we are one of the most underfunded Parks and Rec systems in the country. We're a city with incredible challenges. We have a incredibly high poverty rate. We're one of the poorest big cities in the country. We have incredible challenges with our school system, incredible challenges with, with violence and our opioid crisis. And so, there's a huge challenge that the mayor's office and the city council have to try to figure out how do we allocate that funding appropriately. So while I complain a lot that we're incredibly underfunded, I also understand the really hard decisions that leadership have to make around that funding. So, and that's why we're really blessed, because we have something that no other city has, which is a network of volunteer park friends groups. And that's something I definitely wanted to mention, because I hope some of them, catch this podcast. We have 120 registered park friends groups that are just like regular folks, who just raise their hand and say, I live next to a neighborhood park, or I love my neighborhood park, and I'm going to volunteer to help spruce it up. And that might mean that I'm going to, do plantings, I'm going to clear away invasives, or maybe it means that I'm going to run some programs there, like a jazz night, or, a meet the neighbors night, or a movie night. And those, we have a network of them. So we bring them together 5 times a year. We call it the Park Friends Network. So it might be like the small group, the Friends of Marconi Plaza, or the Friends of Cianfrani Park, or, the Friends of Palmer Park. But we bring these groups together 5 times a year, and at a formal meeting, and we're able to share information, and they learn from each other. And then twice a year, they have these huge service days called Love Your Park Fall, Love Your Park Spring, where thousands of those folks, all in their individual parks, clean up the parks, put them to bed for winter, or bring them back to life for spring. And we could not do our work without those folks. I mean, it is extraordinary that we have this network of volunteers that help support the parks and the system. And I think it just shows that there is this, just this sort of moral imperative among Philadelphians that they love their public space, and they care for it, and they own it. They feel a sense of ownership and stewardship of it that I can tell you, I talk to people all over the country who are in my position. Nobody has anything else like it in any city.
Wow. Maybe it's something that you could take to them and show them what in your free time, Kathryn, how to do it.
We do. No, we speak nationally about it, because people are always calling me like, where did this Park Friends Network come from? And I'm like, it came from the people. It came from the Philadelphians just raising their hand and saying like, hey, I can help, I can help, and I want to help. And they're great advocates too, like they're incredible advocates. When there was a huge, battle around the Philadelphia beverage tax, because that was, going to help fund the mayor's rebuild initiative and help to, invest hundreds of millions of dollars in parks and rec centers. They're the folks that stood up outside City Hall and, rallied to say, this is how important this is to us. This is how important this is to us. So we're incredibly grateful.
And that's working, right? The beverage.
Yeah, the Rebuild Initiative. I was just out 2 days ago dedicating a beautiful new playground at 8th and Diamond, $2.2 million invested through the Rebuild Initiative, which is funded by the beverage tax. So we're seeing these improvements happen every single day in every single neighborhood of the city. And it's totally inspiring. It's going to be, it's really just changing I really do believe that when you change environment, you change behavior. And in these cities, in our neighborhoods, if a public asset like a park or a playground looks like nobody cares about it, right, then people are going to act like nobody cares, right? And when you make that investment, the infusion of care and love and ownership that comes to that community is just, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. It really works.
It makes a world of a difference for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears for a second. So we connected recently at the St. Hubert Fashion Show, and we're both alums of St. Hubert. And so that's how this all came about. But I'd love to hear about how you got involved and how you, where your journey started and how you got to where you are today with being the commissioner of Parks and Recs.
Well, my journey definitely started at St. Hubert's. I'm so proud to be a Bambi. I'm probably one of the proudest Bambis in the world. That's our mascot. For those of you who don't know, once a Bambi, always a Bambi. And, I loved my experience at St. Hubert's, and I tell a story, whenever I get a chance to speak, in front of young girls, that St. Hubert's was the very first place that I was told I could be a leader. And, it happened my sophomore year. And when I got to St. Hubert's, my dad had just passed away, and I was 12 years old when he passed away, and a little lost. Like my siblings had a lot of talent, and I had none. Like I couldn't play sports. I took piano lessons for 9 years. I couldn't read music. I mean, I sort of didn't have like a niche, like I had no discernible talents, and I got to St. Hubert's, and I started to hit sort of a groove, and there was a principal there. It was the first lay teacher at St. Hubert's. Her name was Joanne Walls. Now she's Dr. Joanne Walls. And I thought this lady was amazing, because she was just, a woman in leadership at the school. She was the principal of the school. And my sophomore year, she came up to me and asked me to go on this like leadership conference for teenagers. And she said, I think you could be a great leader. And I remember going home on the 70 bus that day, riding the 70 bus down the Cottman Avenue and thinking, you know what, that's my thing. I'm a leader. I'm going to lead, and that stayed with me, that this is, I think such an important message for girls, that we're not told enough, that we are leaders and we can be leaders. And so, I specifically how I got to Parks and Rec has almost nothing to do with like a background in, the environment or social service, and has everything to do with just, seeing voids and filling them in terms of leadership, and answering calls to leadership. And I started out, working for my college admissions office. I did that for like a year. I went to the University of Scranton, and then I actually got a job at St. Hubert's, and they were starting an admissions and development program. And so I was the first director of institutional advancement at St. Hubert's when I was like 23 years old. I didn't know anything about fundraising, or I didn't know anything about anything, and sort of made it up as I went, and had a great mentor with Sister Alma Rose, who was our president then. I stayed there for about 8 years. It was never a job. It was like a vocation. I worked alongside my teachers. My secretary then used to be my homeroom moderator, Sister Mary Teresa. And then from there, I went to become the chief advancement officer at the city's mural arts program, which really, I think, was formative in terms of my career, because the mural arts program is really just one of the most well-respected nonprofits in the city, and certainly in the region, and possibly in the world. It's really 4,000 murals that have been created over the last 30 years. There's a woman who runs the organization who's a great friend and mentor, Jane Golden, who is an extraordinary fundraiser and just an icon in Philadelphia. And so I worked there for about 6 years, and then got a job with running a nonprofit called the Fairmont Park Conservancy. And that sort of brought me into the parks world. That was about 10 or 11 years ago, and grew that nonprofit. When I got there, it was only 3 people, small but mighty nonprofit. And when I left, we had about 21 people working there. So we grew it significantly over 5 years. And then when Mayor Kenney was elected, he asked me to come and join the administration as the Parks and Rec commissioner. So yeah, it's been a weird trajectory. I joke that, Parks and Rec it's definitely not something I ever thought I'd be doing. I was I played for the Holy Terrors. You might remember that little league team in Mayfair. And I was the catcher for my T-ball team. And if you do the math on that, it's like really embarrassing. My husband had to point it out to me, but like the catcher has no role in T-ball, like your job is just to put that ball up. And, so that's how bad I was like at athletics. And yet here I am, the head of Parks and Rec. And I think that's a story for girls everywhere, you don't have to be able to do it to lead it. But it is a department that's 75% male. So it's, that's, I wouldn't say a challenge, but definitely something that is different for me. I'm very much used to working for and with women. So it's definitely a different experience, but we have an extraordinary staff at Parks and Rec that are just so dedicated to this department and dedicated to the city. And I've learned so much about being a public servant. It's hard. It's very hard. It's hard to have to make really hard decisions, have to stand up for those decisions, because there are so many critics out there. The critique of every decision you make in this position is probably the single greatest challenge. But I think it's a test of leadership, and and also a test of sort of character. So, but it's definitely an experience.
Yeah, quite the journey that you've had. And you always knew you wanted to be a leader in leadership. So not everybody knows that. And,
I think you have to be told sometimes, right? And I think that's the mistake, is that girls, you think young women especially, they go, some of them go through their lives and they don't see that opportunity, and I think about even like girls, when we were in school, Maria, at St. Hubert's, like, there was basically, I would say 80% of the girls I knew became teachers or nurses. And there's nothing wrong with that. I come from a family of I'm the first non-teacher in my family, but I say to girls all the time, don't just aspire to be a teacher. If you can be a leader, become a principal, and if you want to become a nurse, become the head of nursing, or become a nurse practitioner. And, if you don't just become a realtor, own your own real estate agency and work to become, a top realtor in the city of Philadelphia. And I think that's, it's not for everybody, but I think that's a message that girls need to hear again and again and again. I think men hear it all the time. It's understood for men and boys, but for women, it needs to be reinforced. And I think that's our job.
It definitely needs to be reinforced, Kathryn. There's still so many leadership positions that could be filled by women that are not. And I was talking about this last night to some friends, because I was mentioning to you, I was at a conference. I said, I still feel like we're behind really where we need to be as women in leadership.
There's no question. There's no question we are. And especially in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, there's still not been a female mayor. There's not been a female governor. I mean, that's disgraceful. There's never been a female president, when we're lucky, right now with Kamala Harris, vice president. But I mean, it's really unconscionable, that we're in the year 2021 and we don't see women in those positions of power, and I think the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg was really formative for me, like I quote it constantly, but I do think that too often, and especially folks, young girls from where we grew up, I think they feel like they have to make a choice, and I think they feel like they have to make a choice between family and parenting and leadership. And I try to say every single day, especially to my daughters, there is no choice to be made. Men don't make that choice, and neither should you. People pick jobs because they pick careers and pick certain jobs because it's going to enable them to be home more, and, of course it's important to be home with your children. I have 2 girls, but it's as important for us to lead. It is as important for us to lead. It is as important for us to, to be decision makers, and to be in those positions of power. And you can absolutely do both. This whole conversation around you can't have it all. It's not about having it all. Nobody has it all, but it's about, are you using the talents, that your God-given talents, to serve society in the best way? That's the question I ask myself every day. Am I using my God-given talents to serve society in the best way that I can? That's the question we should be asking young girls, not, are you picking a job where you can be, home with your family the most? There's a balance that you can strike in whatever position you choose. And, it's not, I'm not going to say it's easy, but you can do that. And too often girls think that they have to make a choice, and they don't.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think also that, women a lot of times talk about women leadership. More men need to talk about women leadership.
Amen.
And it starts at home, right? It starts with the mom and dad and parenting, that men and women need to be in leadership, and the men have to be part of that. They need to be part of that initiative,
They do. I joke all the time. I don't joke about it. I shouldn't say that, but I tell this story all the time that when I was pregnant, so I never thought that I would be a stay-at-home mom. It never crossed my mind, like it was just never part of, I always knew I'd be a mom. I never thought I'd be a stay-at-home mom. And when I was pregnant with my oldest, and this is about 14 years ago now, I was working at Mural Arts at the time, and as I became visibly pregnant, and people could see that I was going to have a baby, people would start asking me like, hey, what are you going to do when the baby comes? Right. And, and I would talk about, like the daycare options that I was considering and sort of, and then people would get more specific, like, well, how much time are you taking? Do you think that's enough? I'd be like, oh, I'm going to take 3 months, and people would say, oh, it's too bad you can't take longer, and especially in my own family, to be honest, my own family was completely against daycare. Like, how, I can't believe you're going to let someone else raise that baby. That's what we discussed over Sunday dinner, so it was, but I was about 8.5 months pregnant, and my husband came home one night, and we were sitting there chatting, and I said to him, hey, how many people like ask you a day? Like, first I said, like, do people at work know we're having a baby? He was like, of course they do. I was like, okay, how many people ask you like a day, what you're going to do when the baby comes? And he said, what do you mean? And I was like, well, like, how many people ask you like what your plan is when the baby comes? And he says, nobody asked me that. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting, right? The more you say to someone, aren't you going to do this? What are you going to do about this? The more it reinforces for them that the decision that they're making is wrong. You know what I mean?
People seem to have no problem shaming other people. Like
but they don't
shaming.
The men, it's not even a question for the men. It's not even a question of like, what are you going to do when the baby comes? It's only a question for the woman, right? What are you going to do when the baby comes?
That's right, Kathryn.
Just like it's his baby too, And why is it assumed? There's a layer of assumption there, right? That I'm going to take time off from my career, that I'm going to cede my ambition, right? Because of this amazing life I'm bringing into the world, right? And that I am to be shamed. My family didn't shame my husband, about daycare. They shamed me, so I think it's it's societal and it's cultural, and it needs to change. It just needs to change. And that was my own personal experience, but I can't be the only one who's had that experience or who's had that aha moment of saying to their husband, like, why is no one asking you this? And I have to be honest, I married them like a saint. I married a saint. I mean, I'm not easy to be married to. Anybody who knows me can attest to that. But I married someone who for him, it was never a question that we would have a family and that we would 100% equally share those responsibilities. There was never a question on that. And I'm grateful for that every day. But that was a choice I made to marry this man. And that's, I think that's an important message for kids to hear, for girls to hear as well.
It is deep rooted in our society that the woman is the main caregiver. And that's something that needs to change for this whole leadership, women in leadership to change. It goes so far down, like that it's really, I don't know that it's going to change in our lifetime.
I don't think it's going to change in our lifetime. And I want to be clear that there's no shame on either side, and I don't begrudge anybody who makes whatever choice they want to make to not have a career or to have a career. But I think we have to understand what the consequences are of women taking, the break to have children, what the consequences are to gender equity in the workplace, which is women are still making 75 cents to the dollar, right? It might be 78 cents now, but women of color, it's like 64 cents to the dollar. So women are still making less than men. Women are still not in positions of leadership in Fortune 500 companies. Women are still not in positions of leadership in government and in elected office. And we have to understand that is a root cause. is because we remove ourselves from the workplace. It's what happens. We remove ourselves from the workplace. We remove ourselves from positions of leadership, and you can't make up those 10 years. The men are outpacing us, and I think it's because, again, of this inequity around, those decisions that couples have to make when they decide to have children. I think a lot of it is rooted in that, which is there's absolutely nothing wrong with a family that wants a parent to be home a part-time or full-time to raise a child. There's nothing wrong with that. But why is it always the woman? Or most of the time, why is it the woman?
Yeah. Well, I'm starting to see a little bit more men take that role. So that's nice. But I think that there's a lot of work to be had there.
No question.
Yeah, a lot of work to be had. So I know that there's a lot of challenges because of financials with the city of Philadelphia overall and many, many departments. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you have in your division that we could help with?
So some of certainly the financial challenges are the biggest ones. We have the Mayor's Rebuild Initiative is investing again, hundreds of millions of dollars into parks and rec centers and libraries, and it's tremendous. It's a once in a generation investment. It's the largest investment in civic infrastructure in the history of our city. It is funded in part by the Philadelphia beverage tax. I drink more soda than I should, and my motto is drink soda, build parks. But to be clear, the Rebuild Initiative is making up for decades of disinvestment in these facilities. We are blessed with an incredible amount of assets, as I mentioned, but we haven't made the necessary capital investment in those. And Rebuild is not going to touch, I think Rebuild will touch barely half of them. And so we still have tremendous need in terms of our system. And that's our biggest issue. Every single day, a water main breaks, water line breaks on one of our systems, or a roof leaks, or the HVAC conks out, and that's our single greatest challenge, is that we are just forced to make hard decisions around facilities every single day, and we're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. I guess we won't fix that bridge this year because we have to fix the roof on this building, and that's just it's an awful challenge to have. And so that's probably our biggest issue, is just the lack of funding for capital investments that are necessary. Our second biggest challenge, which we're rectifying a bit, thanks to some really great investments that the administration is making in our staff. But, we have 700 full-time employees. At any given time, we have between 1,000 and 1,500 seasonal employees. So those are 6 and 9 month employees that, come on for 6 months and then go off for 6 months, come on for 9 months and go off for 3 months. And that's just the way that our system has been run, because based on, what our busy seasons are. But we need more staff, and we need more staff, both from a programming perspective. We only have, in many of our centers, we only have, for a long time, we only had 100. We had 100 centers where there was one person working. Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh.
One person in a rec center by yourself. So right now we are working to get 2 people in every rec center. But that's still not enough. It's still not enough. They're the chief, cook and bottle washer. It's just, we could use, 5 people in every center. But also from an operations standpoint, I can't tell you how many complaints we field on a day-to-day basis about short dumping. Huge issue in the city right now. It's an epidemic in the city right now, short dumping. What is that? It's basically just people leaving, construction debris or their household trash in a park, or in a, next to a trail, or anywhere, you drive through North Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, and you'll just see piles and piles of mattresses and tires and bags, and just filling spaces because, to be honest, contractors don't want to pay to dump their refuse. And so they just leave it on public property. It's one of our biggest issues right now. So we need more support in terms of operations. right now we have roving crews that go out to clean parks twice a week. But the way that our parks are used, and especially the uptick in usage that we saw during the pandemic, a 50% increase in usage of parks. I mean, to be clear, we were the only game in town. Everything was closed but parks.
That's right.
And so everybody went to parks. And what that meant is we saw a 50% increase in trash. But I couldn't get a 50% increase in staff to pick up that trash, you know? And so, you know, we have and that, mind you, that level of usership has not gone away. It hasn't abated because COVID is, because we're moving past the pandemic. There are still a huge number of people that are using our parks. So we definitely could use more funding for operations. Mm-hmm. That said, where people can help, and I know I mentioned the Park Friends groups, everybody in the city of Philadelphia, if they would raise their hand and join their local neighborhood park friends group. It is not hard to find. You just go online and whatever your park is called, Google friends of that park, and you will find information about that Park Friends group. Join the Park Friends group, attend their cleanups. I mean, it's fun. It's a great way to be out with your neighbors. It's a couple of hours a week or even a couple of hours a month, that you're out there in your park, just helping to clean up trash and do some plantings and weed. That's stuff that we would be lost without the support of those folks. But again, we're always looking to build the ranks of those individuals. And then lastly, people can contribute to groups like the Fairmont Park Conservancy, the Philadelphia Parks Alliance. Those are nonprofit organizations that support our work every single day, and we would be lost without them. So the Fairmont Park Conservancy is myphillypark.org. You can Google, I can't remember what the Philly Parks Alliance website is, but check out those groups, get involved with those groups, become a member of the Conservancy, and that's a huge help to us as well.
Yeah. Well, this has been extremely informative. I've learned so much from you, Kathryn, and I love your spirit and your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
You definitely have are helping to be the solution for the city of Philadelphia and all the wonderful things you and your staff are doing. And people should get involved in your local parks. I, in fact, am going to do the same thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I just sat there thinking, we've helped build some of these little parks here. We're in Graduate Hospital area. Yep. So we've helped with the play park and the Carpenter Park and, but that was a little bit ago. So, I think people need to be told stuff because you don't think everybody has so many things going on constantly, all these things coming at you. Sometimes you just said, you need to be told, why don't you do that or get involved in this? And I know it sounds stupid, but
sometimes people just don't know how to do it. And I think, Maria, I'm sure you have a huge audience of realtors, and I have a lot of ideas for realtors too. I mean, I think realtors can also be telling people as they move into their new neighborhoods, give them a one-pager of here's ways to get involved civically in your neighborhood, join your park friends groups. I mean, the realtors could help us do that, help us advocate for that. Another idea for realtors, and when a lot of realtors like to give gifts to new homeowners. If they have a little backyard, gift them with a tree for that backyard, because our tree canopy, we're in charge of the tree canopy for the whole city. We're in charge of the city's urban forest on top of everything else we do. And our tree canopy is in critical need right now. Our tree canopy is declining instead of increasing. And so we are in desperate need of increasing our tree canopy. And that's something that I wish realtors would do. I wish they would gift every resident, if they have a little plot of land, side yard or backyard, gift them with an appropriate tree, or tell them about our Tree Philly program, because it's free. Any resident, any Philadelphia homeowner can go on our website, Tree Philly, through our Tree Philly program, get a free tree for their yard, free.
Wow, that's great. Kathryn, if your office wants to send me over a one sheet, I can send it out to all the real estate professionals here in Philadelphia. Awesome. I have everybody on my list, so they will all get this video once we send it out next week. So, and it'll be also on Facebook and a bunch of other places. But I would love to send a separate email, just displaying where they can go for these items, because it's better just to give the people the information They have
Yeah, I
everything.
always thought realtors could be great ambassadors for this because you know what? A great park increases home values so
Yes, it does.
significantly, and access to a great park or a great playground or a great rec center directly contributes to real estate values. So we would love for them to give back to us, and it's mutually beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah, think about all the parks. If anybody if you live on Fittler Park, Rittenhouse Square Park, the Safari Park, all these little parks, people say, oh, great, there's going to be no houses in front of me because it's a park, right? There's a lot of value in that.
Absolutely.
A lot of value in that. So it's been great to talk with you today.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honored and I'm grateful and I'm appreciative of your time today. So Kathryn, you make it a great weekend, and I will get that info from you and I'll get it out to everybody in the next week or so.
Thanks, Maria. So nice to talk to you. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Right. You do the same. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.